أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. الحمد لله رب العالمين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تعالى في كتابه المجيد: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والله خلق كل دابة من ماء فمنهم من يمشي على بطنه ومنهم من يمشي على رجلين ومنهم من يمشي على أربع. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات على محمد وآله. Again, before we begin our discussion, let's raise our hands and our voices and call out, may Allah hasten the reappearance of the master of our time, Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma kun li waliyyika al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة ولياهم وحافظا وقائداهم وناصرا ودليلاهم وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. In our continuing discussion that we're having in these 12 nights around the idea of clarifying doubts and clarifying certain issues that we have associated with our faith. Initially I had planned to go in a different direction, but tonight's topic is attached to yesterday's topic. Yesterday we talked about, again, the idea of, can God create a rock so large that he can't lift it himself? And we were talking about the concept of understanding the presence of a creator and the necessity of a creator and how a creator operates. To that end, tonight's discussion is around the question: did human beings evolve from apes? Did human beings evolve from monkeys? Now, our discussion is going to be broken into 4 parts. The first part of our discussion talks about the idea that why did this question come into existence? What brought this question into existence? What brings this question into existence is the idea of traditional creationism and the absence of intellect or the absence of reason from traditional creationism. When we talk about the concept of traditional creationism, refers to the old Christian concept of how God created man. In Christianity, where the book of Genesis speaks about, and then God created the earth in 6 days and he rested on the 7th day, Christianity presented this system that when you look at the world, you look at the world as a miracle of God. And when you look at the world as a miracle of God, that God created this earth and he made it right before he created Adam, and then he put Nabi Adam on this earth, and therefore the earth came into existence. And the idea behind traditional creationism is that you don't look at the earth and the signs that are present in it and imagine or assume that something existed on this earth before. Rather, 2,000 to 3,000 years ago, God suddenly created the earth, and as soon as he created the earth, he put Adam down on this earth, and that's how the earth came about. And a system and a theology of Christianity came into place. Believe, but don't ask questions. What that meant to say is that if you're a Christian, you believe that 3,000 years ago the earth was created and Allah put Adam on it, and that's it. If I see anything different in the earth that should imagine that the earth is older than 3,000 years, or that something doesn't make sense to me, I can't believe it because it would be against my faith, and have faith, but don't ask questions. People, when they were confronted with this ideology and they were told that, hey, listen, the earth came into existence 3,000 years ago, and before that it didn't exist and there was nothing here, they said, but this doesn't make sense. Because when we look at the earth, we find signs within the earth that show the age of the earth older than this time period. For example, dinosaurs that we see in the bones of the dinosaurs we see are millions of years old. Fossil fuels that we utilize indicate that there was growth on this earth millions of years ago. And that growth being present turned into oil, and that oil is something that's useful. And when Christian theologians and Christian scientists were confronted with this reality, and they were told, hey, listen, we see signs that the earth is millions of years old, not a few thousand years old, they said, shh. Don't ask questions, just have faith. You're not allowed to ask questions about this concept. And people said, this is ridiculous. They said, how can we not ask questions when we can see with our eyes and think with our intellect and find signs in this earth that demonstrate to us that this earth is millions of years old? So they were called apostates and thrown out of the system of Christianity. And he said, fine, we don't want to be Christians. Rather, what we see that things existed on this earth before, and now all of a sudden there are different things on this earth. So what happened was that some process by which these things converted from one form to another, and suddenly we came into appearance. And the theory of evolution was established. Now, in the establishment of the theory of evolution, there's a few points. First off, is that the scientists like Darwin, who brought about the concept of the theory of evolution, were actually theists and Christians. Darwin himself was a Christian priest. And his theory of evolution, to say that life originated and changed as time went along, actually didn't imply that life came about into existence on its own. His theory of evolution basically said that everything that exists on this earth possesses an ability to change based upon its environment to have a better life in that area. And his example was, for example, there are birds that exist on an island where it's hard for them to get food unless if their beak is really long. So therefore birds on that island will have a longer beak. And other places where it's beneficial for a bird to have a shorter beak, it'll have a shorter beak on that island, and life will adapt to the environment that it exists in. What happened was that these people who weren't Christian, when they came across this idea, they said, hey, this is a fantastic idea. This is a great idea, that life just changes and comes about on its own. And they said that, hey, Darwin, this theory of yours, we think it's great, and we think that God doesn't exist, and rather that this, because of your theory of science, life just came into existence on its own. And Darwin himself was against this opinion. He said, I don't agree with it. He says, I don't believe in this concept. I still believe that a creator is present and that he is the one who created. But what happened over a period of time is that people took this idea and they extended it to say that no, life came about on its own. There is no creator, and life has the ability to come to its own existence and will continue to exist, and it just came about all of a sudden by itself. Why? Because traditional creationism ignored the reality that existed in the world. Traditional creationism did not address how did things come about, or how did they establish themselves when we see signs in the earth that somehow this life came about through a process of existence. So we see that the concept of evolution in place of the presence of a creator was a concept that came into existence because religion refused to acknowledge reality. And that religion insisted on creating a system of beliefs that were against reality. For example, looking at this cloth, if I suddenly told you that it's white and said that you're not a Muslim if you don't believe that it's white, it would create a conflict in your mind that how can you tell me it's white when my senses are telling me it's black? And some people would find this as a cause of divergence and would separate and would say that no, I can't believe such a religion that forces me to ignore what my senses are showing me and telling me. So this is the original concept of where this theory of evolution established and where it came into place, and said that if theology and religion refuses to acknowledge reality and tell me how this reality came into existence and wants me to believe a fairy tale that is against reality, then I ignore and I discard this and I come in with another theory to take its place. Now, the theory of evolution is also something that ignores reality and ignores the reality of how things exist, because there are certain problems with the theory of evolution of how something came from nothing into something. And there are problems with how this is addressed. Why? The theory of, and we'll mention it briefly to kind of move on with our discussion afterwards so that we can kind of elaborate. There are some problems with the theory of evolution, namely two that I'll mention for you right now. One is that evolution says that something that existed evolved into something else. But where did that original material come from that began the process of creation? Where did material originate from, right? We say that material changes and becomes things and other things, but where did the material come from? If there's no creator to bring about the initial material, where did it come from? That's one problem that there's no answer for. The second problem that there's no answer for in the system of evolution as it exists right now is how did inorganic material become organic material? Meaning that, okay, fine, let's accept that somehow material showed up. Material, minerals, all the elements showed up somehow. But those are not alive, they're dead. How did dead things suddenly become living things? And evolution doesn't have an answer for it. They have some theories that are really ridiculous, that there were crystals involved and lightning with sand and dirt and gases and things like that, and then all of a sudden you put them all together and you shake everything up and it turns alive. Which isn't a legitimate explanation, and as a matter of fact, it's one of the problems with evolution. So even evolution within itself is something that people give themselves as an ideology that they need to believe in something because they exist and they have to come up with some idea of how they exist. Our goal in today's discussion as we move through the rest of these sections is to understand what does Islam say about this and how does it work together. You're with me? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. In the next part of our discussion, we talk about the idea, and we need to understand the idea, that what is the basis of the claim that human beings came from monkeys or chimpanzees. Chimpanzee is the closest example of a monkey that's associated with a human being. Now, there's two things. One that you have to understand is many times when people talk about these concepts, they don't really know anything. So for example, majority of people who come around, they say that we were monkeys and we became human beings. Na'uzubillah. There were monkeys walking around, one day one of us became a human being, and there you go, human beings began. But a scientist doesn't make this claim. A scientist doesn't say that we were monkeys one day and then suddenly we became human beings. Rather, what a scientist would say is that it's not that a monkey and a human being, or a human being came from a monkey, but rather that monkeys or chimpanzees or apes and human beings share a common ancestor. That they have one common ancestor from which these two branches originated. And the true scientific argument is that there is a common ancestor that exists between human beings and apes. And they say we see the point of differentiation when you take a look at the structure of chromosomes between a human being and an ape. Now, even before that, why did this concept begin, or why does it come from? There's an argument that says that 96% of our DNA, or more than that, is common between apes and monkeys and human beings. So they say that this gives us an indication that there's some familial origination between the two of these and that there's some attachment. Further, when they take a look and they see, they say that when we take a look at the concept of the chromosomes of a human being versus those of an ape has 24 chromosome pairs and a human being has 23 chromosome pairs. And what we see is the differentiation is that some point in time from this common ancestor, 24 chromosomes continue to go this way and continue to be and developed into apes and into this structure. But at some point in time through the lineage of the history of this human being and its ancestry, these 24 chromosome pairs, one of these chromosome pairs fused together and reduced the number to 23. And the possession of 23 chromosomes became the delineating factor in which human beings established. And those that remained without fusing that chromosome remained to be apes. And the truth to it is when they look at it scientifically, they can see that in the human being, one of the chromosome pairs is a fused pair that used to be separated, but now as a human being, it's attached. So 23 chromosome pairs for a human being and 24 chromosome pairs for monkey, ape, chimpanzee, whatever you want to call it, and that these two had a common ancestor from which they separated, and one remained in its original process, and the other came about and had a fusing of the chromosomes and had 23. So they say, based upon what we can see in science, we say that we have a shared ancestor. And that the shared ancestor between these two is what caused one to become a monkey and stay in this format, and the other to become a human being. The reason this is a sound argument versus the argument that we were monkeys and one day we turned into human beings is to say that if there was a system of evolution, why did the original stay in the case of the original and the alternate came about from it, but the original never changed? What that means to say is that if the monkey was the original and it changed into a human being, why did the monkey still remain in its lifestyle? So which is why that argument that we evolved, or we were monkeys and we became human beings, is something that even scientifically is an incorrect statement. Rather, the correct statement is that there is a common ancestor between these two. Now that we understand the argument, and that this is the scientific argument, and what's the basis of the scientific argument, let's take a look at what Islam has to say about this. When we want to take a look at what Islam has to say about this, there's a number of sections that we want to address this conversation in. First is what we learn and what we see from ahadith. And this can be split out into 4 sections. The first section that we take a look at is the fundamental of creation of Adam. And that when we take a look at the creation of Adam, we see the narrations from our 6th Imam, Imam Jaffari ibn Muhammad as-Sadiq alayhi salam, where he makes a statement. He says that when he was asked about the creation of Adam, he says that Allah sent Jibreel to this earth to collect clay from the earth. And when Jibreel came to collect clay from this earth, the earth complained to Allah, A'udhu Billah, why is my clay being taken from me? And Jibreel was instructed to explain to the earth that Allah takes this clay to create Adam. That the creation of Adam was something that Allah planned and did completely separately. And that the creation of Adam was done in the heavens and was done away from this earth. The point of that statement is that the statement of Islam, what Islam is saying is that man can't share a common ancestor with apes and monkeys. Why? Because Allah created Adam separately without a mother and father. And which is why we take a look and we see other narrations where, for example, the companions, when they ask our 6th Imam, they ask him, why did Allah create Adam without a mother and father? What was the purpose of this? Is this true that Adam had no mother, no father? And Imam Sadiq explains, he says that Allah created Adam without a mother and father to show His power and ability. To say that Allah is not restricted in His creation, that His origination has to come from an alternate origination, but rather that Allah has the ability to create life without having anything associated or anything that it comes from. Which is why we take a look in the Quran, we see, إِنَّ مَثَلَ عِيسَى عِنْدَ اللَّهِ كَمَثَلِ آدَمَ خَلَقَهُ مِنْ تُرَابٍ ثُمَّ قَالَ لَهُ كُنْ فَيَكُونَ. That Allah Himself is saying that the example of Isa alayhi salam to Allah is like the example of Adam. That Allah created him out of turab, He created him out of dust, out of dirt, and He said to him, be, and it was. Meaning that these riwayat are pointing to us that no, there can't be a common ancestor because the creation of Adam was something completely different and separate that had no association or affiliation with anything else that existed on this earth. Adam was a unique creation. He had no mother and father. So if Adam had no mother and father, how could he have a common ancestor with monkeys? So now we're starting to hit a point where we're hitting a dichotomy again, where we're saying that the signs in the earth that we're seeing, the signs in creation that we're seeing, are telling us that there's some affiliation between these two because of the scientific presence between what we see in creation says that there's some affiliation. But up until now, the ahadith, they're explaining that no, there's no affiliation between these two. However, there are other ahadith that we have to address as well too that give us some space in this creation story that we talk about. One aspect is the statement of our Holy Prophet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. كنت نبيا وآدم كان بين التين والماء. Our Holy Prophet, and we'll inshallah address this in one of the future coming nights as well too, makes a statement. He says, I was a prophet when Adam was still between clay and water. The indication of this and the statement of the Holy Prophet in this statement makes a point that Adam's creation was in phases. It's not that Adam was all of a sudden one day just all of a sudden came about and he became created and he all of a sudden came to life and walked away. Rather, what we take a look and we see, the statement of Rasulullah is that Adam was still between clay and water, meaning that the elements that would make Adam had been selected and prepared, but they hadn't been combined yet. So Adam has phases of his existence in creation. The same way, for example, when we take a look at the verse that we began our discussion with in Surah An-Nur, وَاللَّهُ خَلَقَ كُلِّ دَابَةٍ مِّن مَّاءٍ, that Allah certainly created all of His beings from water. وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَمْشِي عَلَى بَطْنِهِ, and amongst them is that creation that walks on its stomach. وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَمْشِي عَلَى رِجْلَيْنِ, and there is amongst them who walks on 2 feet. وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَمْشِي عَلَى أَرْبَعٍ, and amongst them is that which exists and walks on 4 legs. The point of these ahadith is to say that there are phases of creation that Allah goes through to establish a creation on this earth. And while Allah is saying that I created Adam, and I created him as something, as an individual creation, but the process of that creation and how that happened is something that's unique and different. One of the explanations that our Mufassirin go into is to say that the same way that, for example, when we talk about the birth of a man today, goes through phases. A man, or a human being, in the womb goes through phases, from where he is a germ, to where he is a clot of cells, to where he is bone, to where he is skin stretched over bone, to where he has limbs and thoughts and organs and things, and then Allah creates him into a human being. That the same way that a man now that's born goes through phases of creation, Adam was a creation of Allah that was unique, but it went through phases of creation to bring Adam into existence. So we take a look and we see that there are some arguments about this, that Allah created us from earth, and He says, وَاللَّهُ أَنْبَتَكُم مِّنَ الْأَرْضِ نَبَاتًا, that Allah created us from the earth and grew us from the earth. That some aspect of this can explain that through the phases of creation. Another aspect we take a look at is that Allah, when He wants to introduce Adam to this world, He says that Allah formed the shape of Adam in heaven. And for 700 years, Adam stayed in the shape of clay before Allah blew the spirit into Adam and brought him to life. That this is also a phase of creation. That what does that mean that Adam was in the heavens for 700 years, and the explanation to this? Which is an interesting discussion or point to come about, and we're not sure exactly what that means or what that process was. However, there are a number of narrations that discuss this phase in creation as well too. Finally, what we take a look at is we see that there's a 4th category of a hadith that explains the difference between bashar and insan. That Allah created, when He created Nabi Adam, before He created Adam, we see the narrations from our 6th Imam where he's explaining that Allah says He created many Adam before our Adam. However, there's a difference between our Adam and all those that came before. And there are a few proofs about this, that there was Adam before our Adam. Some of these proofs indicate to us, for example, when we see the hadith of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, Allah created 1,000 Adam before our father Adam. But there's a difference between our father Adam and those that came before. Our father Adam was the first and only Adam that was given this ability of speech. That nutq and the speech and the aql is something unique to our father Adam, though there were Adam before him. When we take a look, for example, at what exists in the earth, we see, for example, there are examples of Neanderthals, there are Homo habilis, there are all these other examples that came before Homo sapiens. And we see their existence, and we can't deny that they existed. Rather, what we do is we take a look and we see that Allah is indicating that there were bashar. There were beings that were created on this earth before Adam. And they were bashar, they were human beings, but they weren't, or they were beings, but they weren't our father Adam. How do we know this as well too? When we take a look, for example, in Surah Al-Baqarah, there's a conversation when Allah talks about the putting of Adam on this earth. قَالَ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. Allah tells the angels, He says, on this earth, I'm going to place my Khalifa. And the Khalifa of Allah on this earth that he's talking about is our grandfather, Hazrat Adam. What do the angels reply? They reply, أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَنْ يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيُسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ. Are you going to put a Khalifa on this earth who will cause fasad and spill blood? Who will cause strife and spill blood? The question comes, how did the angels know that Adam would cause strife on this earth? If there had never been creation of Allah on this earth before our Adam, how did the angels know when Allah said that this Adam, I'm going to make him my representative on this earth? How did the angels know what Adam would do on this earth? The point that we learn is that the angels had an opinion about our forefather Adam, that our forefather Adam would cause strife on this earth, is because of the other creations that were Basha, that were Insa or Basha before our forefather. They had seen Allah put beings on this earth who looked like men, who behaved like men, but they weren't men. As a matter of fact, there's a name for them called Nasnas. Was the creation of Allah, the Adam that Allah put on this earth before He put our father Adam on this earth. That there were beings that existed on this earth and they were present, but they did not have the ability of speech and intellect the way we have it. And based upon their behavior, the angels developed an opinion that men, if put on this earth, would cause fasad and the spilling of blood. And Allah replies to them, Inni a'lamu ma la ta'lamun. Certainly I know that which you do not know. And that Adam was created. Now, we've discussed 4 different categories of a hadith. We've discussed those categories of a hadith that talk about that Allah created Adam exclusively, that Allah created Adam without a mother and father, that Allah created Adam in phases, and that there existed human beings of different types before our father Adam. If we look at these independently and we say simply the fact that Adam was created without a mother and father, we would come to the conclusion to say that certainly man and monkey have no common ancestor, because Allah has insisted that Adam was created without a mother and father. Therefore, if man is created without a mother and father, then therefore there can have no common ancestor with anything else that exists on this earth. However, when we take a look at these other narrations that explain to us that Allah created Adam in phases and there were processes to the creation of Adam, and 2, that there were other beings on this earth that resembled human beings, we find that when we look at all 4 of these ahadith, there's an ability that we possess to come to a conclusion about how to answer this question, that does man share a common ancestor with monkeys? Now, the answering to this question again is in theory. I wasn't there that I can tell you for sure, yeah, I saw it happen. But what we do is we take a look at the resources that we have and we come to a conclusion, to draw a conclusion that is intellectually sound. It's a theory. The same way that evolution is a theory that presents based upon the facts and materials that are present to come to a conclusion about how reality came into existence. The same way no one was present, but we believe that a Big Bang was the cause for the existence of all the material that exists in space. Nobody was there, nobody saw it. But when we take a look at the signs, we see signs that give us an indication that this is probably the way creation happened. The same way when we answer this question, we come to an intellectual conclusion that there has to be a solution to this problem. There has to be something that ties the reality that we see with our faith. It's a theory that we possess. And the theory that some of our ulama have come up with in explanation of this concept point to this idea that Adam and Hawa were brought into existence by Allah. Baby Adam, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. There is no Bibi Adam, okay? Let's be very clear. Sometimes my tongue slips too. Bibi Hawa and Nabi Adam were created by Allah. They were created in a shape of perfection and presented as the example of what Allah wants on this earth. Then they had children. In some narrations, there are 3 children: Habil, Qabil, and Sheikh. Other narrations, for example, talk about the idea that there was Habil, Qabil, 60 pairs of twins, and then Sheikh. And they talk about how this lineage kind of grew and expanded. And then the question comes, Adam, Hawa, kids, where did humanity come from? how did two parents who had kids all of a sudden become into the nation of people of 8 billion, almost 8 billion people that exist on this earth now? Now, there are different answers to this question. For example, some of the Islamic scholars have come to the conclusion, they said that at that phase, marriage between siblings, na'uzubillah, was not forbidden. So the siblings that married amongst themselves and lineages came. Another potential solution comes where it talks about, for example, that there were only 3 children, Habil, Qabil, and that Habil and Qabil, Habil was married to Hur al-Ain, that Allah sent down creations from heaven, and Habil was married to a Hur al-Ain, one of the heavenly beings, and from him came a lineage, and Qabil was married to a jinn, and from the association of the marriage of jinn came other children. And sometimes when you see someone who's very misbehaving, there's a common, statement that he must be from the children of jinn. I have never called anyone a child of jinn, and I do not promote you calling anyone a child of jinn. But there are actually discussions about this, that even, for example, there's a narration in Al-Kafi that talks about the idea that there is a nation, a tribe on this earth that you shouldn't marry into because they are from the children of jinn. And there's a discussion about this, and the validity of the hadith is debated and discussed, and there's no point in creating animosity towards any one nation or another, so we don't mention it in detail. But the idea is that the second theory that's presented is that the lineage of man from the children of Adam was spread out by the intermarriage between Hur al-Ain and Jinnat, and when they had children, those children spread out and more children came, and this is how the nation of men was established on this earth. The third theory that we present is to say that yes, Adam and Hawa were created by Allah and there was no parent for them. So there's no common ancestry between Adam and apes or any other creation on this earth. However, those previous Adam that existed on this earth, their lineages were present on this earth when our father Adam was brought into existence. And the children of Nabi Adam married from amongst those previous children of Adam. And when they married, the lineage of Hazrat Adam from the other side, not from the side of Hazrat Nabi Adam, had a common ancestor with other creations that existed on this earth. You see, the previous Adam that existed on this earth, there's no guarantee, there's no statement that says that Allah created them in heaven and created them without a mother and father. There's no indication of that. So it's possible that the previous Adam that was present on this earth had a common ancestor with other creations that were present on this earth, and their children, when they married the children of Nabi Adam, we developed a common ancestor from that aspect, that there is some affiliation and association that exists. This is a theory. It's not necessarily to say it's an absolute truth, but when we take a look at reality as how it exists and how material is present on this earth, we don't have a problem with the concept that Islam should allow an intellectual approach to determine how this earth was created and how life was brought upon it. We don't have a problem with saying that there's an intellectual way of understanding how this reality came into existence. Because as we mentioned before, and we had this conversation that talks about the idea that a human being is a composite of 2 separate features. One is the creation and the physical presence of a human being, which Allah says, I tell you about it. There's no embarrassment to ask about it. It is something I have allowed you to see and manipulate, which is the physical body. And then there is the spirit that exists, that Allah says that this is something that I retain knowledge of and you don't have the ability to understand it. So when we took a look at these 2 items and we take a look at these 2 aspects, we can come to the conclusion and understand that if reality is showing us signs of affiliation and creation, and that how creation happened, religion does not forbid you from having an intellectual approach to understand how this world came into existence. As a matter of fact, Allah tells you, قُلْ سِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ, go travel in the earth, look at my signs, look at my creation, look at the nations that existed before, and know that what I'm telling you is true. Go. We can't understand Allah by just simply thinking about Allah, because Allah is something that's outside of our reality of how to understand. We have to rely on the signs and the indications that He gives us that He is present. And amongst these signs is how this process of creation came into conclusion. So when we take a look at this discussion in completion and its entirety, we began our conversation, to wrap up and to bring it back to our closing point. We began our discussion by talking about, one, that traditional religious creationism was a problem for people of intellect because they said religious creationism prevents us from asking questions about human beings and how they were created on this earth. In response to that absence of intellectualism and creationism, the theory of evolution was established to say that we came about from nothing and all of a sudden we came into existence. Then we took a look at the idea that is it possible for man to have a common ancestor with monkeys and apes, and we looked at the ahadith that tell us that Adam himself was something that was created unique. And then we took a look at other narrations that talk about the phases of creation and that the previous Adam existed, and we make a conclusion to our argument that it's possible for a common ancestor to be there, that the children of Adam married from the other homo existences that were present on this earth prior to Nabi Adam, and that through that a common ancestor was established between both of them. In this way we can resolve this question and say that religion doesn't prevent us from thinking about things with an intellectual format, and that we are allowed to think about these things and to ponder over them and come to conclusions about how Allah presented His creation on this earth. The discussion can go much longer, because in this there are many questions and answers to how contemporary atheists and contemporary evolutionary theorists question and argue about the existence of man coming about independently. But one of the things that we know from Islamic sciences is that فَاقِدُ الشَّيْء لَا يُعْتِي. If something doesn't possess a quality, it can't give that quality to something else. So meaning absence and lack of aql can't give aql. Lack of living organism can't create organism. Something that creates must first possess the ability to give the characteristic to what it creates. And this argument and this discussion gives us the signs and the light and the instruction that something can't come from nothing. Finally, we come to our conclusion in our discussion tonight around the Masa'ib of Imam Hussein. And tonight we mention the Shahada of the first Shaheed of the Waqi' of Karbala. While he wasn't present in the field of Karbala, he is the first martyr of Karbala, Hazrat Muslim ibn Aqil. Muslim ibn Aqil is a unique personality that you have to have an appreciation for. The one who is known as Safir Hussein. Safir refers to an ambassador. An ambassador like Muslim is one who was given the complete rights and responsibilities of Imam Hussein, where Imam Hussein said that the hand of Muslim is like my hand. That if you want to do my bay'ah, do the bay'ah of Muslim and it's the same as me. There's a narration that says that after the event of Karbala, in the life of Imam Zainul Abidin, he was often seen sitting with the children of Aqil, and not so much with the children of Jaffar. Amongst the brothers of Amir al-Mu'mineen, there were the children of Jaffar, who was the brother of Amir al-Mu'mineen, who were present in the battle of Karbala, and the children of Aqil, who were present in the battle of Karbala. And they said, we saw Imam Zainul Abidin, he would sit more with the children of Aqil than he would with the children of Jaffar. And when we asked him about this, he said, the children of Aqil sacrificed for my father like no one else did. The sacrifices presented by them were unlike anything else. Hazrat Muslim ibn Aqil, his shahadat and the shahadat of Imam Hussein have many similarities between the two of them. Imam Hussein was a stranger in a strange land and had no supporters with him when he was shaheed. Muslim ibn Aqil, when he was in Kufa, he lost all of his support and was left alone in the city of Kufa with no one to help him. Hazrat Muslim ibn Aqil, when he was left alone and the army came to capture him, they thought this will be easy for us to capture. He is a stranger amongst the city and there is no one here to help him. So they thought he would be someone who is easy to kill, and they sent few soldiers and they kept asking for more and more. And when Umar Sa'ad, Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad turned to them, he says, I sent you to capture one man, you keep asking for more soldiers. They said, you did not ask us to capture a common human being. You asked us to capture one of the Banu Hashim. He is unlike anything else we have ever fought before. And the similarity to Imam Hussein when he was left alone, Wahid and Farida, in the field of Karbala, they said, we saw Hussein ibn Ali. His back had been bent because of the shahadat of Abbas. He had lost the nur of his eyes because of the shahadat of Akbar. We looked at him and we thought, this lonely old man, what can he do with us? There will be no fight with Hussein. It will be an easy capture for us. And they said, and then Hussein ibn Ali raised his sword and he fought us in a way that we ran in fear from him. He would come chasing us and we would go running from him. The same way that Muslim ibn Aqil, when he was alone in Kufa, they thought this will be easy for us. But they said Muslim was such, there was no way to capture him. Imam Hussein was martyred thirsty. There was no water for him. Muslim was martyred thirsty. There was no water for him. Hazrat Muslim ibn Aqil was martyred in such a way that no one was martyred before. Imam Hussein was martyred in a way that no one was martyred before. But there are some differences between these two as well. And namely, the difference that we take a look and we see is the treatment of the children of Muslim ibn Aqil and the treatment of the children of Imam al-Hussein. There are some similarities between them as well. The same way that Imam Hussein presented a son in the field of Karbala who made a sacrifice that was great and azim. The same way Muslim ibn Aqil had a son in the field of Karbala, Abdullah ibn Muslim ibn Aqil. Abdullah ibn Muslim ibn Aqil was a young man about this age of 18 or 19 years who presented in the way of his father on the day of Ashura. They described in the court of Mukhtar, they said, Muslim had a son, Abdullah. We captured an archer and we asked him, what did you do on the day of Ashura? He says, I was the archer who killed Abdullah ibn Muslim. They said, what did you do to kill him? He said, this young man came into the battlefield with anger, with pride to defend his uncle, and he began to fight. There was no one who could match him with a sword, and he kept mowing down the army until the command was given that these are the children of Banu Hashim. You won't kill them with swords and spears. Throw your stones at them, hit them with spears from distances, shoot arrows at them. He says, in this case, I began to shoot arrows at Abdullah ibn Muslim. As I shot one arrow, he saw it coming. He raised his hand to protect himself from my arrow, and my arrow pierced his hand and pushed it against his forehead. When he was in this condition that his hand had stuck into his forehead, he turned in my direction and he said to me, oh man, have you no shame? Do you not know the families that we come from and the lineage that we possess? As he was speaking to me, I shot a second arrow at this young man and I pierced his heart. He fell from his horse. Mukhtar said, oh man, what did you do after this? He says, I went to reclaim my arrows that I had shot at this young man. I pulled my arrow from his heart. Then I went to remove my arrow from his forehead. But my arrow had hit him so hard, the shaft came undone as I wiggled it in the forehead of this young man. But the point would not come out. I then took my knife to remove the arrow. In this instance, the court of Mukhtar in anger began to attack this man. Mukhtar said, no, don't kill him with your swords and spears. Kill him the way he killed the son of Muslim. Kill him with your arrows. They said in the court of Mukhtar, they shot him with arrows and then they burned his body for what he had done. But Muslim sacrifice was presented in his son the same way Imam Hussein presented. But the difference is in the daughters of these two. You see, when Imam Hussein was on his way to the field of Karbala and his tent had stopped, a rider came with a black flag. In those days, when a messenger would come and he had news, he would ride on his horse with a black flag, and he brought news from Kufa. And when he reached the encampment of Imam Hussein, the people began to come and question him. And in this process, he came and he stopped at a place where children were playing, and he turned to the children. He says, which of you knows where is the tent of Imam Hussein? A small girl by the name of Hamida turned and said, that's my uncle. I'll take you to my uncle. So Hamida, this small girl, began to lead the way, and this man carrying his black flag began to make his process through the tents of Imam Hussein. As he approached the tent of Imam Hussein, the supporters of Imam Hussein came out and said, what news do you bring? He says, I bring news of Muslim ibn Aqil. They said, what news do you have of our leader Muslim? He says that Muslim has been killed in the streets of Kufa, and that they dragged his body through the streets. As he gave this news to the companions, they said, we saw this small girl. She sat down on the ground, picked up sand and started to put it in her hair. This messenger screamed. He said, oh child, this is the action that orphans perform. Why do I see you performing this action? One of the companions with tears in his eyes said, this is the daughter of Muslim, and you have given her the news of the shahadat of her father. When Imam al-Hussein was brought the news of Muslim ibn Aqil, he said, bring me Hamida. They've hurt Hamida in a way that they should have never hurt Hamida. He brought the daughter of Muslim ibn Aqil. He sat her in his lap. He caressed her head the way Rasulullah said, one who loves an orphan will be with me in heaven as my brother. He showed her kindness. He gave her earrings. And he said, oh Hamida, from this day, Hussein is your father. I am your family. If you have any need, we will fulfill it. I am here for you. He gave her earrings to show her love. This is the difference between Muslim and Hussein. The daughter of Muslim, Hamida, when her father was killed, was shown love and kindness. And it's the daughter of Hussein, Sakina, when her father is killed, they don't show her kindness. There is no one who runs their hand over the head of Sakina. Instead, they smack the cheeks of Sakina. They tear the earrings from the ears of Sakina. They light the clothes of Sakina on fire, to where she says, a man approached. As my clothes were burning, I told him, oh Sheikh, we are the children of Banu Hashim. We would rather burn alive than have an non-mahram touch us. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. Raise our hands in dua. يا محمود بحق محمد يا أعلى بحق علي يا فاطر السماوات بحق فاطمة يا محسن بحق الحسن يا قديم الأحسان بحق الحسين. Oh Allah, forgive our mistakes and cover our flaws. Oh Allah, accept this small ibadat on our behalf. Oh Allah, there are those amongst us with hajat. By the mention of the Masa'ib of Aba Abdullah, fulfill their hajat. Oh Allah, those amongst our community who are in difficulty and in sickness, by the mention of these Masa'ib, give them all shifa'ah. Oh Allah, the mu'mineen around the world are suffering through difficulties. Give them all aman wherever they may be. Oh Allah, protect our lineage and keep them on the right path. Oh Allah, give us tawfiq to be the supporters of Imam Zaman. And most importantly, hasten the reappearance of Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman, Matim Hussein.
जिनका नाना नबी जिनका बाबा अली जिनकी माँ फातिमा जिनका भाई हसन वो है मौला हमारे हुसैन वो है मौला हमारे हुसैन वो है मौला हमारे हुसैन मौला मदीने वाले मौला मदीने वाले मौला मदीने वाले मौला मदीने वाले करबल में आ गए हैं करबल बसाने वाले मौला मदीने वाले मौला खैमे सजा रहे हैं वादा निभाने वाले मौला मदीने वाले मौला मदीने वाले करबल में आ गए हैं करबल बसाने वाले मौला मदीने वाले मौला یہ در وہ پاک در ہے جو فاطمہ کا در ہے، یہ پیارے مصطفیٰ کا مولا علی کا در ہے۔ مقتل میں آ گئے ہیں قرآن سنانے والے، مولا مدینے والے، کربل میں آ گئے ہیں کربل بسانے والے، مولا مدینے والے، مولا۔ اسلام نے پکارا قرآن نے صدا دی، یثرب کا شاہزادہ یثرب کی شاہزادی، نکلے سفر کو گھر سے کلمہ بچانے والے، مولا مدینے والے، کربل میں آ گئے ہیں کربل بسانے والے، مولا مولا۔ رو رو کے بولی سگرا دل ڈوبتا ہے میرا، ویرا کیا مدینہ جنگل میں ہے بسیرا، مجھ کو رلا گئے کیوں خوشیاں لٹانے والے، مولا مدینے والے، کربل میں آ گئے ہیں کربل بسانے والے، مولا مدینے والے، مولا۔ صلوات۔